Look at the drink in your hand right now. Now close your eyes and imagine this. That warm, weightless feeling once belonged to an ancient creature from a time before we were even human, long before the first word was ever spoken, before the first seed was planted in the ground. There was a creature on the distant forest floor of Africa actively chasing that very same feeling. Today's story is not simply about alcohol. It is about uncovering why your brain has been craving this liquid for the past 10 million years. In 2014, biologist Robert Dudley at the University of California, Berkeley, published a book with a provocative title, The Drunken Monkey. His idea was simple, yet startling. Millions of years ago, ripe fruit that fell to the ground began to decay naturally. Airborne yeast converted the sugars inside that fruit into alcohol. And when ancient primates ate it, they suddenly experienced something entirely new. They became drawn to that warm, relaxed sensation and kept coming back in search of it again and again. And it was not just primates. Birds have been seen flying erratically and even tumbling from branches after feeding on fermented berries. In parts of Africa, enormous elephants have been observed seeking out areas filled with overripe fruit. Even tiny fruit flies are drawn to the scent of alcohol before they can properly master flight. Long before humans ever appeared, the animal world already shared this ancient attraction. So by the time humans finally stepped onto the evolutionary stage, that craving may already have been deeply embedded in our biology. Only one question remained. When did we learn to create that feeling for ourselves? Instead of passively waiting for chance to produce it on the forest floor, the answer was found in an ancient cave near Haifa, Israel, called Raqefet Cave. There, archaeologists discovered stone mortars carved directly into the cave floor by Natufian hunter-gatherers around 13,000 years ago. Inside those ancient mortars, scientists found clear traces of cereal grains that had been soaked, allowed to germinate, and then fermented. In other words, someone inside this cave 13,000 years ago knew how to brew beer. But this is where everything we thought we knew about history gets turned completely upside down. The Natufians had not even invented agriculture yet. They did not grow wheat. They did not grow barley. They went out into the wild, gathered individual heads of wild grain by hand, and carried them all the way back just to brew beer. Humans learned how to make alcohol before they learned how to grow the ingredients used to make it. About 1,000 years later, in what is now southeastern Turkey, another group of hunter-gatherers did something that should have been almost impossible. They raised enormous stone pillars weighing more than a fully loaded truck, arranged them in massive circles, and carved their surfaces with intricate images of wild animals. This place is called Göbekli Tepe. For years, no one could explain why nomadic people with no permanent homes and no established villages would mobilize such an enormous workforce to build something this monumental. Then researchers tested the enormous stone vats found at the site, and a startling possibility emerged. Those vessels may once have held large batches of fermented grain. Göbekli Tepe was not a village where people simply lived. It may have been something closer to humanity's first great gathering place, almost an ancient pub, a festival center where people traveled from far away to come together, raise a drink, and celebrate. That possibility sparked one of the most fascinating debates in archaeology. For generations, we believed history followed a simple sequence. Humans settled down first, began farming for food, and only later stumbled upon fermentation and alcohol. But Patrick McGovern, one of the world's best-known archaeologists of ancient beverages, has argued that the story may have unfolded the other way around. He points out that turning grain into bread requires an elaborate process of grinding, kneading, and careful baking, turning grain into beer. On the other hand, can begin with little more than water, time, and patience. According to this hypothesis, humans may not have entered the age of agriculture because they wanted bread. They may have started farming because they wanted more beer. It may have been the powerful desire for fermented drink, not hunger alone. That helped persuade the last wandering hunter-gatherers to finally stop moving and settle in one place. That craving may have shaped something even bigger than agriculture itself. Writing. Among the earliest forms of writing ever discovered on clay tablets from ancient Sumer, researchers found records that were not poetry and not laws. They were records about beer, how much grain went in, how many liters of beer came out, and who was entitled to receive their share. Before humans wrote literature, we wrote bar tabs. By around 7000 BC, the evidence becomes even more concrete at a village called Jiahu in central China. Archaeologists discovered pottery jars containing residue from a deliberately blended fermented drink made with rice, honey, grapes, and hawthorn fruit. This is the oldest confirmed alcoholic beverage recipe ever discovered, and whoever created it clearly knew exactly what they were doing. And this was never a habit confined to one corner of the world. In Africa, people tapped palm trees and fermented the sap. In ancient Mesoamerica, communities fermented agave into a drink called pulque. In Japan, rice fermentation would eventually give rise to sake. Across the planet, civilizations separated by enormous distances independently arrived at the same remarkable discovery. But nowhere did alcohol shape society more deeply than in ancient Egypt. The workers who built the Great Pyramids were not paid in coins. Part of their daily compensation came in beer, roughly 4 to 5 liters a day. And this was not some occasional bonus. It was an official part of their ration. And that makes more sense than you might think. Water from the Nile could be unsafe to drink, while brewing and fermentation could make beverages more reliable, while also delivering a dense source of calories to help laborers endure the brutal desert heat. The Egyptians even believed beer was a gift from the god Osiris, and physicians mixed it with herbs as part of medicinal treatments. A single vessel of beer could serve several roles at once: hydration, food, medicine, and prayer. But why does this drink affect us so powerfully? Inside your brain, alcohol triggers a surge of dopamine, the same chemical involved when you eat something delicious or experience the thrill of winning. That rush helps create the relaxed, slightly weightless feeling people associate with drinking. But it can also come with the headache, dry mouth, and uneasy feeling the next morning, driven in part by dehydration and by a toxic compound called acetaldehyde, produced as your liver breaks alcohol down. Somewhere deep in the past, an ancient human woke up feeling just as miserable and was probably every bit as confused as you are now. Over the centuries, drinking gradually evolved into a culture of its own. In ancient Greece, wine stood at the center of intellectual gatherings known as symposia, evenings built around drinking, conversation, and philosophical debate. The Roman Empire carried that culture across a vast territory, turning wine into one of the busiest and most valuable commodities of the ancient world. Then came a genuine technological leap. Alchemists in the medieval Middle East and China developed techniques of distillation, a process that could separate and concentrate the alcohol inside a fermented drink. For the first time in history, humans could deliberately create a liquid far stronger than anything ordinary fermentation could naturally produce. Centuries later, some societies tried to erase this seductive liquid altogether. In the United States, nationwide prohibition lasted from 1920 to 1933. But the experiment largely failed to eliminate drinking. By then, alcohol was no longer some passing trend. It had become deeply woven into human culture and perhaps into much older biological impulses as well. So now, look back across the entire timeline. 10 million years ago, a primate on the forest floor learned to seek out the sensation hidden inside overripe fruit. 13,000 years ago, humans were brewing beer in caves before they had even learned to farm. 12,000 years ago, that same desire may have helped bring people together to build some of humanity's earliest monumental structures. Civilization did not invent alcohol. Alcohol may have been one of the forces that helped civilization emerge. Every time you take a sip tonight, you are repeating a ritual that began before humanity had a name, before anyone could write a single word, and before there was even language to describe what celebration meant. If this story made you look at the drink in your hand a little differently, tell me in the comments which part surprised you most, and subscribe to the channel, because next time we are going even deeper into the mysteries of our ancient past.